Do you agree with Deion that Shedeur is going to start this year with the Browns?
I wish I could, but I don't. I love Deion. I love his son. His son should have been the first overall pick again. I'll say it. But I don't see how Shedeur is going to get any shot in Cleveland this year unless it's something like you experienced where everybody gets hurt.
Skip Bayless just had a meltdown so dramatic you'd think someone stole his Diet Mountain Dew stash. After hearing Deion Sanders praise Shedeur Sanders, he reacted as if he just discovered his gym membership didn't come with therapy sessions. The jealousy was so thick it could power an entire reality show, making it clear Skip might be allergic to anyone younger, cooler, and more talented. The whole scene was pure comedy served with a generous side of midlife crisis.
Remember, I'm going to assume that Deion taped the New Heights podcast at the end of last week. It was dropped on Monday.
Right.
But it had to be taped ahead of Cleveland shocking the Green Bay Packers. So I assume he was talking about the 0-2 Browns. But Deion said, I have a prediction to make. I don't know if he had inside information with that prediction. He does know Jimmy.
If you're enjoying, please subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you think. Skip Bayless looked utterly stunned when Deion Sanders suggested Shedeur Sanders could start for the Cleveland Browns. His expression twisted into disbelief, as though someone had swiped his last protein bar. In that moment, Bayless seemed to grasp that Father Time isn't taking his calls, creating a perfect meme.
Stories that got passed around that doomed Shedeur to the 5th round. It was something about during the interview, they had a couple, but during one of the interviews, somebody with the Giants, I don't know if it was executive or coach, asked Shedeur about you, Shedeur's relationship with you, the mentoring, teaching, coaching, and somebody asked some question about, is Tom your role model? Do you try to model your life after Tom's? And Shedeur said something like, well, I don't want to model myself after his wife left him for a trainer.
Deion Sanders grinned as he dropped a bold prediction, while Skip Bayless clutched his notes like a shield against optimism. This wasn't a distant fantasy or a Madden simulation. Deion meant now Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns, this season. No hedging, no hesitation. Just a challenge, deal with it.
And Shedeur's only hope in Cleveland is that the owner wants some kind of publicity splash at some point in the season, because that's why the owner stepped up and insisted that his coach and GM step back and take Shedeur Sanders, because they had no use for Shedeur Sanders. Trust me, no use. It's why they took Dillon Gabriel 50 slots ahead of Shedeur. 50 slots. They took another rookie quarterback that you watched at Oregon, that I watched a whole lot at Oklahoma. And as I've always said about Dillon Gabriel, I think he's a little better than Tua.
Instead of embracing the idea of a young quarterback rescuing a franchise notorious for ruining them, Skip Bayless spiraled into panic. His reaction veered from sports analysis to pure melodrama, transforming him into a modern town crier of despair, warning everyone as if football itself were under siege.
So now it sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to all but imprison Shedeur Sanders in the football sense of a very talented rookie quarterback who obviously needs reps, needs an opportunity, and who now, barring some miraculous luck, will not get the opportunity to play in a single real game. I'm sure many around the NFL are celebrating as we speak. They are chuckling about this. Many in the NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his daddy a lesson. And it just makes me want to.
He started with the usual polite routine, the fake "I love Deion, I love Shedeur" lines that felt as authentic as a used car salesman swearing, "Trust me, it runs like new." But once that pretense was out of the way, the floodgates opened. Skip painted an NFL doomsday scenario, claiming the only way Shedeur would ever play in Cleveland is if a biblical plague wiped out the entire quarterback room, though, of course, he knocked on wood for good measure, because nothing says sincerity like a desk tap after predicting half a roster's destruction. What's really happening here isn't rational analysis or fair debate, it's pure jealousy wrapped in a tortilla of bitterness. Deion was radiating confidence, tossing out bold predictions like Oprah handing out cars, and Skip couldn't stand it. Deep down, he He knows what everyone else is starting to see. Shedeur Sanders isn't just another rookie, he's a movement, a headline machine in the making. And Skip? He's used to being the headline machine himself. The meltdown became even juicier when Skip dragged Dillon Gabriel into the mix. The quarterback Cleveland drafted 50 spots ahead of Shedeur, as if to prove a point he was already losing.
Stefanski stays in charge, it's going to be over his dead body that Shedeur is going to play a snap this year. As I've always said about Dillon Gabriel, I think he's a little better than Tua. Built stocky like Tua, nice arm, accurate, but he ain't Shedeur. Shedeur is very special to me. If Shedeur were starting right now for the Cleveland Browns, I think they'd be the talk of the league because they did just beat the Packers because they have the #1 defense in the National Football League. If you gave Shedeur Judkins in that defense, I guarantee you he would be lighting it up because he was born and raised to be a starting quarterback in the National Football.
As if the Browns didn't already have a reputation for treating quarterback decisions like blindfolded darts thrown at a bar wall, Skip tried to spin Dillon Gabriel as the crown jewel of Cleveland's grand plan, short, stocky quarterback with a decent arm, handpicked for greatness. Gabriel's a fine player, sure, but putting him on a pedestal while ignoring Shedeur's pedigree, talent, charisma, and the golden ticket last name of Sanders was peak Skip. He went so far as to call Gabriel better than Tua, a comparison that felt more like a fan letter than football analysis. Every time Shedeur's name surfaced, Skip's tone shifted like someone had just asked him to babysit a toddler with a drum set. The irony, though, is perfect. Skip openly admitted, with his trademark dramatic flair, that if Shedeur started right now, Cleveland would be the talk of the entire NFL. Not just good. Not just exciting. The talk of the league. Imagine that after decades as the NFL's punchline, the Browns suddenly turning into the headline. But instead of embracing it, Skip slammed on the brakes. Too risky. Too soon. Too much Shedeur. Basically, Skip doesn't want the Browns to shine unless it happens on his timetable, which is roughly never.
Allow me to conclude by getting angry once again about Shedeur Sanders. The other day, I'm thinking, well, at least in Cleveland, at least if Flacco's going to get banged up, they're probably going to get Dillon Gabriel in there. You never know what could happen to Dillon Gabriel. He's smallish. Maybe Shedeur gets his shot. And then I stumble upon the fact that the Cleveland Browns did this to Shedeur Sanders, and I missed it because it happened just before the season started. It was actually very late August, the very end of August. They re-signed a player they had cut. You'll remember him from New England, Bayless. Zappy. They did that to Shedeur.
And then came Skip's Cleveland quarterback carousel breakdown, which sounded less like a strategy session and more like an episode of reality TV. First up was Joe Flacco, whose arm has been around so long it should qualify for a veteran discount at IHOP. Sure, he had one decent finish, but let's not pretend he's anything more than a football relic running on fumes. Next was Dillon Gabriel, Cleveland's shiny new toy, short enough to be mistaken for the ball boy but apparently, according to Skip, better than Tua. And let's not forget Bailey Zapp, the quarterback Cleveland swiped from New England like leftovers from a neighbor's fridge. With this lineup, Shedeur isn't just buried, he's practically in witness protection. Skip made it sound as if the Browns' depth chart were guarded by a medieval knight shouting, "Over my dead body," every time someone mentioned giving Shedeur snaps. And honestly, with Cleveland's track record, that might not be far from reality. But here's where things got spicy. Skip, through clenched teeth, hinted that Deion might actually know something. Primetime isn't just tossing predictions like your uncle after a few beers. This is a man who's dined with the Browns owner and has half the NFL on speed dial. If Deion says Shedeur's going to play, odds are he's got more than just fatherly pride whispering in his ear.
Tonight, Shedeur Sanders made the entire National Football League look like a whole bunch of petty fools. In some cases, racist fools. In many cases, Deion despising fools. Tonight at Carolina, Shedeur Sanders made all those teams that had 143 chances to draft him before he went 144th. He shamed all of them, including the Cleveland Browns.
He probably has a text or two from the real decision makers, the ones sitting in leather chairs eating steak while plotting roster moves, and that's what really eats at Skip. Because Deion isn't just a dad hyping his son, he's Deion Sanders, the guy who can make headlines just by walking in wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. When he says Shedeur is going to get a shot, it carries weight. Skip, meanwhile, is left with his notepad, his skepticism, and his desperate need to be the smartest guy in the room. Now comes the prediction game, where things turn full soap opera. The optimistic view says the Browns will eventually stumble their way to 2 wins out of 10, Flacco will flame out, Gabriel will crash harder than a Windows update, and desperation will push the coaching staff toward Shedeur, not by design but by necessity. And what better chaos than tossing a rookie quarterback with pedigree into a season already on fire? The rumored timeline? Week 12. Against the Raiders. A team tough enough to be respectable but not so terrifying that it feels like tossing Shedeur into a lion's den. It's the NFL equivalent of starting your video game on normal mode.
It's in his genes, it's in his bloodline. The league wanted to teach him and his father a lesson. That's why he fell to the 5th round. Cleveland has the potential. I can see him winning 7 or 8 games, seriously. So Stefanski loves Flacco. Stefanski obviously loves Dylan Gabriel. Stefanski loves Bailey Zappi, who he brought back and is on the practice squad, but I think he's really number 3 on the depth chart. So how's Shedeur going to get a shot unless the owner steps in and just says, stop it? If they're really struggling, where they're like 2-12 or something. But if Stefanski stays in charge, it's going to be over his dead body that Shedeur is going to play a real snap this year. That's just...
And let's be honest, by week 12 Cleveland fans would be starving for anything resembling hope, something more exciting than Joe Flacco running the offense like a VHS tape stuck in rewind. But the concerns are both real and hilarious. What if Shedeur gets tossed onto a sinking ship, struggles, and suddenly every Skip Bayless in America jumps up shouting, "See? He's not ready." That's the nightmare scenario, not that Shedeur fails on his own, but that the Browns ruin him before he even has a chance to prove himself. And if any team could pull that off, it's Cleveland, the Bermuda Triangle of quarterback careers. Yet here's the twist, Shedeur isn't built like the others who folded under pressure. He turned Jackson State into a powerhouse, then walked into Colorado, one of the most hopeless programs in college football, and dragged it into relevance. He's been doubted, he's been through storms, and he's already flipped a losing culture on its head. If anyone can handle being Cleveland's break glass in case of emergency quarterback, it's him. And Skip knows it. He absolutely knows it. That's why he's fuming, because if Shedeur does get his shot, if he does light it up, then Skip's entire routine of cautious pessimism gets exposed for what it really is, jealousy dressed up as analysis.
Stories that got passed around that doomed Shedeur to the 5th round. It was something about during the interview, they had a couple, but during one of the interviews, somebody with the Giants, I don't know if it was executive or coach, asked Shedeur about you, Shedeur's relationship with you, the mentoring, teaching, coaching, and somebody asked some question about, is Tom your role model? Do you try to model your life after Tom's? And Shedeur said something like, well, I don't want to model myself after his wife left it.
The Browns' defense is already elite, swatting down opponents like flies, and a solid run game is starting to emerge. All they're missing is a quarterback who can inject actual energy into the offense. Plug in Shedeur, and suddenly Cleveland goes from team you forget exists until they blow a lead to team everyone's talking about. That's the nightmare Skip doesn't want to admit Deion could actually be right. And the funniest part? Skip himself basically conceded that if Shedeur were starting, Cleveland would dominate the conversation game. He said it with that tone people use when they're forced to compliment someone they secretly dislike, dripping with resentment, every syllable sounding like a personal betrayal. The real story here is that Skip isn't mad at Shedeur, or even at Deion. He's mad that he's not the one driving the narrative. He's mad that primetime has the ear of NFL owners while he's stuck yelling into a microphone, hoping people still think he's relevant. He's mad that a rookie quarterback he didn't crown first might make him look like the cranky old man screaming at clouds. By week 12, when the Browns season inevitably implodes and fans start chanting for Shedeur, remember this moment, remember Skip's meltdown, his jealousy, his desperate insistence that it couldn't happen. Because if it does happen, and Shedeur lights up the Raiders with even a halfway decent performance, the internet will never let Skip live it down.
So you're saying he's not special. Your
That's
bottom
exactly
line?
what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm saying he is
He's
special.
not.
special.
No, can he be a starter in this league? Yes.
Well, if you could be a
Special
starter
is
in the
different.
league, you damn special.
Yeah.
There's only 32 of them in the world.
Some people can get drafted in any draft and still be a first rounder. I would like to believe I was like that. You said before the season you thought he would be the first overall pick.
Absolutely.
But the year prior, why didn't he come out? Because he knew in that draft,
No, but he had to go back and win for his dad.
Hell
His
yeah,
dad needed him.
he had to go. He wasn't ready to come out.
on.
Shit,
If his name is Shedeur Johnson, do we care if the 5th round pick that's starting?
No.
No. This is an issue because of
And honestly, isn't that the real dream here? Not just Shedeur proving himself, not just Cleveland finding a spark, but Skip Bayless being forced to sit there grinding his teeth while Deion Sanders smirks in the background like he's been right all along. That's the comedy gold. Shedeur on the field, Skip in full meltdown mode, and Deion somewhere off camera sipping victory like sweet tea. So buckle up, because whether Shedeur starts week 12, week 14, or next season, one thing is guaranteed: Skip Bayless will fume, rage, and combust at every step. And somehow, that spectacle might be almost as entertaining as the football itself. But Skip couldn't leave it there. He tried to spin his tantrum into a galaxy brain theory that Shedeur only looks good because of Deion's hype machine. Right, because clearly throwing perfect spirals and carving up defenses is just smoke and mirrors. By that logic, Tom Brady was nothing more than good lighting and a lucky haircut. The mental gymnastics here could win Olympic gold, and Skip would still swear the judges were biased against him. The real kicker? Every time Shedeur shines, it feels like Skip loses another hair follicle out of sheer spite.
And signed Bailey Zappi because I promise you, Kevin Stefanski, the notorious Kevin Stefanski, who did in Baker Mayfield, did in Shedeur with Bailey Zappi. Even though they had cut him after he started one game in Cleveland late last year, I think it was the last game, and they moved on. But then he's thinking, you just know, Stefanski has no use for Shedeur Sanders. That was an ownership. That was a Jimmy Haslam special. They re-signed Bailey Zappi, and there was a report this past week in ESPN Cleveland that a lot of the practice snaps are now being split between Flacco, of course, Dylan Gabriel, and Bailey Zappi, and that Shedeur is mostly watching. Shedeur is still stuck in hell in Cleveland.
Skip just can't process the idea that a young quarterback might simply be talented, no conspiracy, no cheat codes, no secret sauce, just raw ability. Admitting that would feel, to him, like lighting his TV contract on fire and tossing his "I told you so" trophy collection into the flames. Meanwhile, Deion stays cool as ice, backing his son with the kind of confidence that rattles Skip more than a live mic slip. The fun part? Every Skip meltdown only fuels Shedeur's legend. It's free advertising. Every scream, every rant, every side-eye becomes another clip in Shedeur's highlight reel. At this point, Skip's entire persona revolves around pretending he's the last man on earth who sees the truth. Spoiler, the only truth showing is his jealousy, shining through like a bad spray tan under stadium lights. And if Shedeur keeps balling out the way he is, Skip may need to invest in stress balls and blackout curtains just to survive the season.